Welcome to Future Foodcast. I'm Pam Miller, your host. Today's guest on our show is Anne Marie Butler. She is the Director of Strategy and Innovation at Edlong. Welcome to the podcast, Anne Marie.
Thank you, Pam. Nice to be here.
Yeah, I'm glad to have you here. And really, the first thing I want you to address is what you do at Edlong and then also what Edlong does. But it's interesting to me, you have a long title, but it doesn't even reflect all that you do. And so if you could share a little, just give us a little overview to kick off the show.
Sure. So as you said, it's Global Director of Strategy and Innovation. It is a mouthful, but it covers a multitude. So I think strategy and innovation tie together really well. So within the business, what I do is scout for new technologies, look at ways to bring them into the business, connect that within the different teams within Edlong, and build that into our long-term strategy for the business. I also look after our product line in terms of the life cycle of our products with a team. And I'm really lucky to be in a position where I touch a lot of facets of the business. Jack of all trades, master of nothing is kind of the way I'd put it, if I'm honest. And yeah, it's a really interesting, exciting role.
Yeah, you have a lot of flexibility and you are facing a lot of different departments, well, internally and also just a lot of companies and finding out what's going on externally as well as part of your strategy and innovation. You're always out there looking to see what the new technologies are.
Exactly. And I think, I hate to say it, but COVID has changed an awful lot of how we innovate. So it's very interesting to me to be in a role where we're talking about innovation, where pre-COVID innovation cycles would have been maybe 2 years. Whereas now we're looking at like 6-month innovation cycles with a lot of companies. You need to be at the cusp of everything. And I'm seeing that there's a lot of companies out there that are hiring this kind of a role where you have somebody whose whole job is to scout new technologies and integrate them into the business.
Well, that's really interesting, your observation about the innovation. So it shortened the innovation timeline. You're having to respond faster and move faster.
Yeah, it's a very dynamic time to be in the food industry. We talk about the future of food, but the future of food is now. It's moving faster than ever before, I think.
Yeah, and I have to wonder, I mean, if the rise of technology in the food industry has accelerated that, do you think?
I spoke with somebody last week that was the topic of our whole conversation was food tech and how food and technology up until maybe 15, 20 years ago were two separate entities. And then they started to combine, and now food tech is what the food industry is. It's a combination of how we utilize new technologies and integrate those into our business or integrate them into food or integrate them into ways to deliver food to our consumers.
Yeah, interesting. Well, I'm glad people are having the conversations and especially people in your position. That's exciting. Well, let's also give a shout out to Edlong, who you work for, and talk about them as a company and what they do, because I personally had not heard of Edlong before.
We are the industry's best kept secret and we are challenging that. So Edlong is a flavor company and we are around since 1914. So we're over 100 years old, 110 this year. And in that time so Edlong is something everybody catches on, but it was actually Edward Long that started the business back in 1914. And over the years, we've gone from being focused on the kind of bakery industry to focusing on the taste of dairy. So we sell flavors, we manufacture and sell flavors that are reminiscent of the taste of dairy. And why we say that instead of just saying we sell dairy flavors is we have dairy and dairy-free flavors. So we really focus in on the industry that is allergen-free, plant-based, vegan, whatever you're looking for. If you want the taste of dairy or the luxuriousness associated with dairy, that mouthfeel, that creaminess, and even some of the, dare I say, magical type properties of dairy for masking applications, then that's something we do as well.
All right, so let me get this straight. You make dairy flavorings that are not dairy, so non-dairy dairy flavors.
Correct. Yes. Yeah. Okay. Another mouthful, but yeah, that is what we do. That's at the heart of our business. But making food taste good is the ultimate goal for anyone in the flavor industry, and we take that very seriously.
Right, because you've expanded what you do as the industry has changed to like the position that you're in, figuring out what direction we need to go in, what flavors we need to be looking at, what's happening out there in the market, right?
Very much so, yeah. Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
big part of what we do.
Well, so you mentioned plant-based, so the non-dairy parts, you're
Yes.
plant-based. And what is the strategy behind that?
So plant-based is something that I think it would have been, what year are we in? We are in 2024. So even back as far as 2016, we were looking at plant-based applications. But our business has had plant-based or dairy-free flavors for near on 60 years.
Oh, wow.
So we've been at the forefront of this for a long time, really honing our craft. But a flavor is only as good as the food you put it into or the beverage. So in order for us to make sure that what we're doing works, we have to have a full understanding of the range of applications, the challenges, the processing. And I think plant-based is one of those ones that has given more challenges than most companies have ever expected, because there's an onslaught of new ingredients coming to the market, new proteins, new fats, new challenges in terms of processing, new off notes being produced, new interactions between those ingredients, and trying to create new types of food for consumers.
Okay.
So it's a fabulous time to be in the food industry, but lots and lots of challenges. And funnily enough, flavor can help with pretty much all of them.
Exactly. So you really partner with your customers, who are those other food businesses that are looking to enhance the products that they're making, or actually give them the qualities that they want them to have.
Yes.
Right.
And like I would say that our strategy is very much around collaboration, be it with our suppliers or with our customers. Collaboration is at the heart of what we do, because you need to understand what new ingredients are coming into the market and what challenges those bring with them, so that we are then preempting the problems that our customers will then have.
Wow. Well, what else do you want us to know about the company? Because we kind of skipped over that. You're over 100 years old.
We are. And do you know, I'll tell you the most exciting things about our company. The first one is probably that we are female owned, and we are one of the only flavor houses in the world that are privately held and woman owned.
Okay.
And that's important for me, being a woman in the industry, but also because it just brings together something different. We find that our owner, Laurette Rondonnet, has been in the business and was president of our business since 2012. She recently handed over the reins of the presidential role to Mike Natale, who joins us from Ingredion, but has a wealth of experience in flavors and in the food industry in general. And as a company, we've really honed in on that flavor piece. But being a woman-owned business, it just gives us something unique as well, so we can support our customers' diversity goals as well. And diversity is something we're very passionate about, as is giving back.
Well, I think that the fact that you're also private in today's food industry is a great thing to bring forward as well, because there are a lot of companies that have reached the size and flavors. It's a small niche within the food industry. Let's face it, there are a lot of companies, but there are also a few companies when you compare, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah. And flavor is one of those ones that it's almost an afterthought for most companies, but it's the difference between your product staying on the market and being successful, or your product failing, because at the end of the day, we all buy off the back of how something tastes.
this is true. Taste, I hear it again and again, Anne Marie, from guests on this show, that taste is number one. Whatever it is they're developing, whatever product they have, if it doesn't taste good, it's not going to make it, because people aren't going to buy it. They do not even, they could have every health benefit in the world associated with their product, but if it doesn't taste good, it's just not going to last. So that's a great point.
Yeah. Yeah. But we're consumers ourselves. I find that same struggle when I go to the grocery store and I pick up something and I'm like, how did this get to the market? And then you go back and look for it again 6 months later and it's no longer there.
It's not there. Interesting. Yeah, I always think about some of the early products that were trying to break into the market. And I always go to old protein bars because they used to taste like cardboard. They just hadn't gotten it all together. Now there are hundreds, even thousands on the market, and a lot of them taste really great, but that was not the beginning. And the
No.
ones that were early did not make it, did not make it at all. Well, what's coming up for Edlong? What's going on in the business now, and what are you looking to later here in 2024?
So
And
I know I mentioned some of the challenges in the market, and one of the things that we're addressing is off notes. And we've been working on a project for quite a while. We were part of a consortium both in Europe, and we partnered with companies in the US as well to bring to the market what we're calling our super masker range. So it's a range of flavors that really help to tackle some of the off notes that we're seeing from ingredients introduced to the market. So things like pea proteins, faba proteins that, can bring a lot of bitterness or astringency to a product. And
okay.
I know that there's probably people listening to this we make a really clean pea protein, and you might. But the challenge is what happens when you put the pea protein into something else and it gets processed? And that we know that there's a whole host of new notes that get developed. So this super masker range really, really tries to answer those challenges so that we can bring better tasting food to the market.
Very cool. Before we get too far into the super maskers, off notes and different note for our non-flavor listeners, can you just explain that terminology in the flavor world real quick?
Sure. So an off note is a note that is perceived in a product that shouldn't be there. So if you imagine when you were eating your protein bars and you're finding it really dry, and then afterwards you're like, was I licking tinfoil? That metallic bitter taste coming in at the end, or the real sharp tang that you're getting at the back here, that's an off note. Or if you're going, it tastes a bit cardboardy.
Yeah.
There's a whole other host of different notes that you can get, but those are the most common ones that we get feedback on from the market. You might taste it in things like your protein shakes, or if you bought an unflavored protein and you bring it home, you put it into a smoothie and then you just taste something. You can't put your finger on what it is, but there's that something that would be considered an off note, something that shouldn't be there.
Thank you very much.
Huge challenge within the food industry, food and beverage industry.
Well, and there are a lot of new foods coming on the market, Anne Marie, to your point, a lot of plant-based companies, a lot of different protein companies that are looking for solutions to our future lack of animal protein, for example, and the consumer trend towards more plant-based proteins or other-based proteins. And so it's interesting. Flavors will play a big role in the success of those products then.
Very much so. If you think of flavor, most people think of flavor and go, oh, I want my product clean. It's still clean. Flavors are natural. They're safe for consumption. We all use flavors. When you're cooking at home and you put vanilla extract, you're using a flavor to put into your food. If you're putting salt in, technically you're adding a flavor, pepper, spices, herbs. These all add flavor. It's really just a more concentrate way of doing it on a bigger scale for consumers.
Yeah.
And flavor is the key to facilitating the future of food in my mind, because you can bring, and I know I'm biased. I acknowledge it. I'm very biased, but I know. Yeah. Well, I've worked in the food industry for more than 20 years now. And, for nearly 20 years, not more. And I'm aging myself.
Yeah.
And what I found is that off notes aren't just from ingredients. It can be processing. It can be interactions between different things. It can be the shelf life, leaving it on a shelf for too long, or changes in how it's stored. So being able to make great tasting food can help facilitate not just more innovation in the space and more options for us to have great tasting food, but it can also help with long-term storage of products, so that you're getting food to different markets that mightn't necessarily be able to get those products. For example, UHT milk. If you needed a flavored milk, you want it to taste fresh, flavor can help with that. So for me, it's not just about making a milk taste like chocolate milk, or making a vanilla ice cream with strawberry flavor or whatever it is. It's really about being able to facilitate the future of food.
Mm. I'm getting hungry just talking about all this right now. But I think the revelation for me, and maybe for a lot of our audience, is that the role that flavors play. I think as someone who just can, and everybody eats, people that eat food, we do not analyze, oh, I wonder what flavor is in the, we just know that it tastes good. We're not paying attention to, or if we're eating one of the new pea protein, that was the example that you used, not to say anything, but there are some strong newer flavors out there that the super masker idea, those additions will really help with some of those stronger plant-based flavors. And but we don't think about that. We just know the end result or the mouthfeel that we have, or you know, the entire, I always think about eating as it's an experience. And so we think about that whole experience. And I don't think I ever really like pull the flavor piece of it out and say that made the difference. I don't know that as somebody who's just eating the food.
And you wouldn't, but you'd notice if it wasn't there.
Exactly. That's the thing. Yeah, its absence would definitely be noticed, and its presence makes a difference in how I'm experiencing the food.
Yeah,
I love that.
very much so.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very interesting industry to be in. And not, we talk about off notes from ingredients like proteins, etc. But there's also a part of the industry that is about nutrition when you can't consume food. So like there's meal replacements for maybe clinical patients. Those all need to be made in such a way that they are consumable and taste better. And that's not necessarily down to just proteins. It might be down to other nutrition type ingredients like vitamins and minerals that can bring off notes.
Okay,
and there's a whole other piece within the food industry that we're seeing come on now with adaptogens. And those also bring with them different types of off notes. So things like caffeine would be considered one, or what's the ashwagandha is a big one that we're seeing an influx in. And that's been incorporated into food to make it, to give benefits to consumers, but it still has to taste good.
Okay. Hadn't thought about that. See, you're expanding our minds to think outside the box, but you touch on all these different things. Isn't there also a lot of medications now that they want to make them more palatable? And you would play a role there as well.
Yes. I mean, I have a 2-year-old niece who was was sick recently and had to take medication, and it needs to taste good. That is not going into her unless it tastes some way pleasant. So flavor has a critical role to play at all aspects of food, beverage, and even the medication side of it.
Yeah, thanks for expanding our world this morning, Anne Marie. Morning for me, afternoon for you. We're in different parts of the world, but our listeners are in different parts of the world too. So I love that. We have covered lots of topics concerning flavors, a little bit about technologies and innovation that's happening in the food space. Is there anything else you'd like to share with our audience before we go?
To those that are in the food industry, just remember flavor's critical. Don't leave it till the end. Work with your suppliers. They're there to help. And to those that are not in the food industry, think of us every time you taste something delicious. Edlong is lucky enough to be, even though dairy is quite a niche profile, we're actually in all the aisles of the grocery store. So there's nowhere you would imagine that you can't use flavor. And we're in pretty much everything from pet food right up to yogurts, cheese, beverages, snacks, which are some of my favorites. So flavor is a very versatile tool.
Wow, I hadn't even thought about pet food. There's another whole category that needs flavors. And people will honestly spend a lot more money on their pets to have them have food that they like than themselves.
I'm seeing that. That is very true. Yeah.
Anne Marie, thanks for a very engaging and entertaining appearance today. I've really enjoyed our conversation. Thanks for being with us.
Happy to be here. Thank you very much, Pam.
And thank you to our audience for listening. If you'd like to hear more like this interview with Anne Marie, leave us a comment, engage with us. We answer everyone. Until next week, I'm Pam Line-Miller.
Thanks for listening to Future Foodcasts. Future Foodcast is powered by Farm to Plate, the leading food blockchain platform. Subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts to stay up to date with the very latest innovations in the food industry.